Breaking news. As of today, February 1st, 2026, the entire strategic map in Eastern Europe, well, it just shifted. And it is looking a lot darker for the Russian military. We are looking at confirmed reports that Ukraine has successfully struck deep, and I mean deep, into the Russian rear, hammering critical repair bases and wiping out drone command centers. Experts are already calling this a, quote, massive blow to Moscow's engineering and surveillance network. The eyes and ears of the Russian war machine are effectively going blind. But before we dive into the details of these strikes and what they mean for the war, I have a quick message for you. If you support Ukraine and want the truth about the front line, the stuff you simply won't hear on the evening news, subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest deep dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments, and today. Well, today we're going to cover some truly wild developments.
We are exploring the destruction of a $100 million radar system designed specifically to hunt stealth fighters. We're also going to look at a junkyard missile Ukraine built out of spare parts that just shut down a factory making Russian fighter jets. And we'll discuss the speed trap Elon Musk had just set up to stop Russian drones from using Starlink. And tragically, we have to look at the human cost of this January terror campaign.
It has been an incredibly kinetic 24 hours.
It is, putting it mildly. There's just so much to unpack here. Let's start with the immediate situation. We have breaking reports coming directly from the general staff.
Right.
Regarding strikes that happened, well, literally last night and early this morning. There is a phrase floating around intelligence channels today, node neutralization. It sounds clinical, but the effects are anything but. What are we actually looking at here?
It's a significant shift in targeting philosophy. Typically, when we look at headlines, the focus is on a tank blowing up or a trench line being overrun, kinetic frontline action. But what happened on February 1st was different. Ukraine went after the connective tissue that keeps the Russian army functioning. The most significant strike, and the one that has strategists talking, happened near Rozhivka in the occupied Zaporizhia region.
Rozhivka. Okay, let's pull up the mental map. That's a logistic hub.
Exactly. On the surface, the target looked like a standard barracks or maybe a supply depot, but intelligence identified it as a repair base specifically for an engineering and sapper regiment.
Engineering and sapper. That sounds technical, maybe a bit dry compared to special forces or tank battalions.
Yeah.
But in the context of the Surovikin line, those massive defensive fortifications Russia built, these are the guys who actually matter, aren't they?
They're the only ones who matter for holding ground in the long term. In this specific war, engineers are everything. We aren't talking about fixing flat tires on a Jeep or, changing the oil in a truck. These regiments maintain the specialized gear, the mine layers, the bridge layers, the heavy obstacle clearing vehicles like the IMR-2. That equipment is rare, it is expensive, and it is incredibly hard to fix.
So by hitting the repair base, it's not just about blowing up a building, it's a supply chain attack.
Precisely. Ukraine isn't just destroying a facility, they are forcing Russia to tow every broken piece of heavy machinery hundreds of kilometers to the rear to get fixed. It creates a massive bottleneck. The Russian defensive lines rely entirely on these engineering vehicles to maintain minefields and repair fortifications that degrade from weather and artillery. If the gear breaks and you can't fix it locally, the defensive line physically starts to crumble.
Right.
You can't clear a path for your own tanks, and you can't stop the enemy from clearing yours.
It's the military equivalent of closing down the only mechanic shop in a 100-mile radius while everyone is driving broken cars on a dirt road.
That's a very good way to put it. You paralyze their ability to maintain the status quo. But that wasn't the only target. The General Staff also confirmed coordinated strikes on drone control points in 3 different areas: Myrnrod in Donetsk, Nekoslitsa in the Kursk region of Russia, and Troy-Bortnoy in the Bryansk region.
Hitting them inside Russia and in the occupied zones.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, that takes significant coordination. It's not just a lucky shot.
It does. And again, look at the target selection. They aren't trying to shoot down individual drones, which is inefficient like swatting flies.
Yeah, a waste of ammo.
Right. If you shoot down a drone, they just launch another one 10 minutes later. They are hitting the control points, the antennas, the command posts, and the pilots themselves.
Decapitation strikes. You take out the operator, not the machine.
Exactly. When you hit the control point, you create a blind spot on the front line. For a period of time, Russian artillery has no spotters. Their infantry has no overhead cover or early warning.
You're blinding them.
It effectively removes their reconnaissance capabilities in that sector, leaving them vulnerable to surprise attacks. You are effectively putting blinders on the bear.
Speaking of blinding the enemy, this brings us to the most expensive loss of the day for Russia. We have reports of a massive hit in the Luhansk region on a radar station. But this wasn't just a standard spinning dish, was it?
No, this was a strategic asset, the 1L119 Nebo SVU.
The Nebo SVU. Even the name sounds intimidating. For those listening who aren't radar technicians, why is this specific system such a big deal? Why is this a headline event?
It's an AESA radar-active electronically scanned array. Without getting too bogged down in the physics, traditional radars are like shining a flashlight in the dark. You have to physically point it to see, and there's a lag. An AESA radar is like having hundreds of little laser pointers that can look in different directions simultaneously. The Nebo SVU is designed specifically to spot targets with low radar cross-sections.
So it's a stealth hunter.
Exactly. It's designed to track stealth aircraft, modern cruise missiles, and those small drones that regular radar misses. It is the backbone of their advanced air defense.
Now the price tag.
Estimated at around $100 million.
Wow. That is a painful financial loss, but I assume the tactical loss is worse.
Much worse. Money can be printed, but high-tech electronics take months, maybe years, to build. By destroying this unit in Limarivka, Ukraine has punched a significant hole in Russia's air defense umbrella over Luhansk.
Yeah.
This is what we call shaping the battlefield.
Shaping it for incoming fire.
Yes. If that radar is gone, Ukrainian cruise missiles, like the Storm Shadow or Skal-P, and long-range drones have a corridor where they can fly undetected. It opens the door for strikes deeper into the rear. It's essentially kicking the door down so the rest of the team can enter.
And this pairs with another strike we saw recently on the Tirada 2 system. That's electronic warfare, right?
Yes. The Tirada 2 is a specialized system designed to jam satellite communications. It was taken out by the Strix and Star drone units. So look at the pattern here. Ukraine is blinding the radar that sees their missiles and destroying the jammers that block their communication.
They're blinding the bear while clearing their own ears.
It's a systematic dismantling of the high-tech layer of the Russian military.
It feels incredibly deliberate, but what's fascinating is how Ukraine is doing some of this long-range work. We often talk about Western weapons, Patriots, AT-HAMAS, Storm Shadows, but there's a new doctrine emerging that relies entirely on homegrown tech.
The junkyard doctrine.
I absolutely love that name. It implies scavenging, almost a Mad Max vibe, but the results are incredibly high-tech. Let's talk about the Flamingo.
The FP-5 Flamingo. This is a perfect example of engineering ingenuity under extreme pressure. It's a domestic cruise missile, but the design philosophy is brilliant because it solves the biggest problem in war: supply chains. It uses the AI-25TL engine.
And for the aviation geeks listening, where does one find an AI-25TL engine?
In the L-39 Albatross, it's a training jet.
A training jet?
Yes, it's the plane every pilot in the Eastern Bloc learned to fly on. There are hundreds of these engines lying around in storage or old airfields across Eastern Europe. Ukraine took these reliable, readily available engines and strapped a massive warhead to them.
How massive are we talking?
1,150 kilograms.
Whoa! To put that in perspective for the listeners, that is significantly heavier than the warhead on a U.S. Tomahawk missile. That is a bunker buster.
It is. It's a sledgehammer. And the cost? Somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million.
Which is nothing in missile terms.
In the world of cruise missiles, where a modern missile can cost several million, that is practically free. But we have confirmation that the Flamingo works. It struck the Skif-M plant in Belgorod.
And Skif-M isn't making consumer goods.
Far from it. They manufacture specialized tools for the Su-57 and Su-35 fighter jets, Russia's top-tier aviation.
Okay.
Satellite imagery analyzed by open-source intelligence showed 4 distinct impact points on the roof of the facility.
4 hits. That rules out luck.
Exactly. It proves the Flamingo has real precision guidance. They are putting high-value Russian industry at risk using repurposed trainer jet engines.
It's asymmetrical warfare at its finest.
You take something old, make it dangerous, and destroy something brand new.
It puts Russia in a terrible position. They have to use million-dollar air defense missiles to shoot down cheap drones and repurposed engines. It's an economic war of attrition. Speaking of cheap, let's talk about the Darts drone. This seems to be the other side of the coin, smaller, but just as dangerous.
The Darts is replacing the quadcopters for those slightly deeper rear strikes. It's a fixed-wing, twin-engine drone with a range of about 50 to 70 kilometers.
And the price point?
About $1,100.
That's less than a high-end smartphone. You can buy a darts drone for less than the cost of a new iPhone.
And it's carrying a warhead capable of taking out a fuel truck or an electronic warfare tower worth millions. But the real aha moment with the darts is the guidance system. It uses a dual camera setup.
Okay.
One for navigation and one high-res camera for the terminal phase that locks onto the target visually.
This addresses the jamming issue we talked about earlier, because usually jamming cuts the link between the pilot and the drone.
Completely. It makes the drone immune to jamming in the final seconds of the attack. Even if Russian electronic warfare cuts the signal or scrambles the GPS, the drone's onboard computer has visually locked onto the target image like a shape recognition algorithm and drives itself in.
Fire and forget.
In the truest sense.
So cheap, immune to jamming, and hits 70 kilometers behind the lines. It forces the Russians to push everything further back, slowing down their logistics.
It stretches the elastic until it snaps. If your fuel trucks have to stop 80 kilometers away from the front to be safe, your tanks run out of gas.
Now, speaking of technology and countermeasures, we have to touch on Starlink. This has been a massive controversy. Recently, Russian troops using Elon Musk's satellite internet terminals on the front line to coordinate their own attacks. It felt like a betrayal of the technology's intent.
It has been a major tactical issue. We saw reports of Russian Molniya and BM-35 drones using Starlink terminals to stream high-quality video while flying deep into Ukrainian territory.
Wow.
It gave them a huge reconnaissance advantage they didn't technically own and shouldn't have had access to.
But it sounds like there's been a software fix, a patch to stop the bleeding.
It seems so. After direct talks between Ukrainian Minister Mikhailo Fedorov and SpaceX, they've implemented a new countermeasure called speed gating.
Speed gating. How does that distinguish between a Ukrainian user and a Russian drone?
It relies on physics and user behavior. The Starlink terminals are now programmed to cut their signal if the GPS detects they are moving faster than 75 to 90 kilometers per hour.
Ah, I see. A soldier in a trench isn't moving. A truck on a muddy road usually isn't doing 90 kilometers an hour, but a fixed-wing attack drone.
It's flying much faster. The moment it hits that speed threshold, the terminal goes dark. The drone loses its link and its video feed cuts out.
It blinds the drone mid-flight.
Pretty much.
That is a smart, non-kinetic solution. Doesn't require blowing anything up, just changing the code.
Both Musk and Fedorov have confirmed this is yielding real results. It's effectively blinding those specific deep penetration Russian reconnaissance drones that relied on Starlink. It forces Russia back to their own inferior communication systems, which are easier for Ukraine to intercept.
It's amazing how a software update can change the battlefield, but we have to pivot here. We get caught up in the tech, the missiles, the radars. It's easy to treat this like a strategy game. But the reality on the ground for the people of Ukraine is brutal right now. We need to talk about the human cost.
It is crucial we don't get lost in the gadgetry and forget the stakes. This isn't just a tech war, it's a war for survival for millions of people.
The energy situation sounds increasingly dire. We are seeing reports that are frankly terrifying.
It is critical. Russia's winter campaign has been relentless. As of February 1st, Ukraine's power generation capacity is down to 33% of pre-war levels.
33%, that is barely functional. That's a collapse.
It's a collapse of the grid in many sectors. We're seeing rolling blackouts where civilians only have power for 3 to 4 hours a day. And remember, it's February. Temperatures are dropping to -15, -20 degrees Celsius.
That is life-threatening cold.
Yeah.
For the elderly, for children, for anyone vulnerable. No heat, no light, freezing temperatures.
It is. And the strikes aren't stopping. Just yesterday, there was a horrific tragedy in the Dnipropetrovsk region. A Russian drone struck a bus.
This wasn't a military transport. This wasn't moving troops.
No, it was a civilian bus carrying miners to work. 15 people were killed.
Oh my God.
15 workers just trying to do their jobs, trying to keep the economy going. And in Zaporizhia, a maternity hospital was hit.
A maternity hospital.
Yeah.
It's hard to even process that level of cruelty. It feels targeted.
It highlights the January terror campaign. Russia dropped over 5,700 air bombs on Ukraine in just 1 month. It's a strategy of sheer volume and terror intended to break the population's will. They can't win on the battlefield, so they are trying to freeze the civilians into submission.
Yet on the Russian side, we constantly hear about these meat grinder tactics, but are they running out of men? How long can they sustain this?
The casualty numbers are staggering. Estimates put total Russian casualties around 1.2 million since the start of the war.
1.2 million.
They are desperate for manpower. We're seeing reports now that they are recruiting university students for the unmanned systems forces, promising them high-tech jobs as drone operators.
That sounds appealing to a young recruit. Video games and air-conditioned trailers, far from the mud.
Exactly. But intelligence suggests it's a bait and switch. They sign up for the drone corps expecting to be pilots, but many are being sent straight to the infantry trenches to fill the gaps.
Unbelievable.
It shows a level of cynicism and desperation in their mobilization efforts. They are eating their own future.
So with all this violence, the energy strikes, the bus attacks, the radar hits, what is happening on the diplomatic front, I know there are talks scheduled. Is there any hope for a pause?
Yes, trilateral talks between Ukraine, the US, and Russia are scheduled for February 4th and 5th in Abu Dhabi.
And there's this rumor about a moratorium on energy strikes leading up to this.
Right. President Trump reportedly brokered a week-long moratorium on energy strikes. But if you look at the last 48 hours, the maternity hospital, the miners' bus, the constant drone barrages, it doesn't seem to be holding.
Actions speak louder than press releases. The bombs are still falling.
My analysis is that Russia is using this January terror to try and force concessions before they even sit down at the table in Abu Dhabi. They want to break Ukraine's spirit before the diplomats start talking. They are trying to bomb their way to a better negotiating position.
It's negotiation by terror. However, amidst all this, there is some movement on long-term security guarantees.
Yes. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed that a document on security guarantees has been finalized. It signals a shift we've been expecting, where Europe takes on the primary responsibility for defense, but with continued U.S. technological support.
It's a maturing of the alliance.
Yeah.
Europe stepping up, U.S. providing the high-end tech.
Exactly. It creates a more sustainable, long-term defense posture for Ukraine, regardless of political shifts in Washington.
So let's bring it all back together. What does this all mean? If we zoom out, we see Ukraine blinding Russian radars, breaking their engineering backbone, cutting off their satellite tech, and hammering their factories with homemade missiles.
It means Ukraine is systematically dismantling the tools Russia needs to wage a modern war. They are forcing Russia back into a 20th century style of fighting blind, deaf, and relying on mass infantry charges because their high-tech advantages are being picked off one by one.
It's a race between Russian mass, sheer numbers of bodies and old shells, and Ukrainian innovation.
Precisely. And innovation is proving to be incredibly resilient.
Here's a thought to leave you with. If Ukraine can blind a $100 million radar with a cheap drone and destroy a fighter jet factory with a repurposed trainer engine from the 1970s, are we witnessing the end of superpower military dominance as we know it? Is the era of the expensive weapon over?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question that every general in the world is trying to answer right now.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex Anaria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Don't forget to subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.